January 26, 2011. A quiet evening in Philadelphia turns into a nightmare. 27-year-old school teacher Ellen Greenberg is found dead in her apartment with 20 stab wounds. At first, police suspect homicide, but weeks later, the case takes a bizarre twist. Her death is ruled a suicide. How can someone stab themselves 20 times? And why would investigators close the case so quickly? This is the shocking story of Ellen Greenberg. Ellen Ray Greenberg was born in New York and raised in a loving family. Friends described her as a kind, caring, and passionate teacher. In 2011, she was engaged to her fiancé, Samuel Goldberg, and planning a wedding later that year. By all accounts, her future seemed bright and stable, but beneath the surface, Ellen had been struggling with anxiety. Her doctor had recently prescribed her medication, and she was reportedly trying to balance stress from teaching with wedding planning. Still, no one who knew her believed she was suicidal. On January 26th, a major snowstorm swept through Philadelphia. Ellen stayed home from her job at a local elementary school. That evening, she returned to her apartment at the Venice Lofts, a gated community where she lived with her fiancé. Around 6:30 p.m., Samuel claimed he went to the gym in their building. When he returned, he found the apartment door locked from the inside. He said Ellen wasn't answering, so he kicked in the door. Inside, he found Ellen's body in the kitchen. She was slumped against the cabinets, with a knife lodged in her chest. When police arrived, the scene was disturbing. Ellen had been stabbed 20 times, 10 wounds to the back of her neck and head, 10 more to her chest, stomach, and torso. There were no defensive wounds on her body, no signs of forced entry, and no evidence of a struggle in the apartment. At first, detectives treated it as a suspicious death. The medical examiner initially classified it as homicide. With 20 stab wounds, it seemed impossible for it to be anything else. But just weeks later, the case took a shocking turn. After discussions between police, prosecutors, and the medical examiner's office, Ellen's manner of death was changed from homicide to suicide. The official reasoning: the apartment was locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. Ellen had a history of anxiety and was on antidepressants. Authorities argued she may have stabbed herself repeatedly in a state of desperation, but the public, and especially Ellen's parents, were horrified. From the very beginning, Ellen's parents, Joshua and Sandra Greenberg, refused to accept the suicide ruling. They hired independent experts to review the evidence. Several red flags emerged: the position of the wounds. Many were to the back of her head and neck, locations nearly impossible to self-inflict multiple times. The angle of the stab wounds. Some appeared to come from behind. The knife wound in her chest was so deep it penetrated her heart. To Ellen's parents, this was clearly murder, possibly staged to look like suicide. The case was filled with contradictions. Locked door theory. Samuel claimed the door was locked from the inside with a swing bar, but experts later noted it was possible to close the door and latch it from outside with force. Crime scene contamination. First responders reportedly moved the knife and handle evidence before photos were fully documented. Autopsy disputes. Multiple forensic pathologists have since argued that the wounds are inconsistent with suicide. One even called the ruling absurd. Motive questions. Some pointed fingers at Ellen's fiancé, Samuel, since he was the only other person with access. However, he has never been charged, and police have said there's no direct evidence linking him to the crime. For years, the Greenberg family has battled Philadelphia officials in court, demanding the case be reopened. They filed lawsuits, released autopsy photos, and even brought in independent investigators. In 2019, forensic experts hired by the family concluded Ellen's death was a homicide. They noted that the stab wounds in her spine and the back of her head would have incapacitated her, making further self-inflicted wounds impossible. Still, the official ruling has not changed. In 2025, a new Hulu docuseries revisited Ellen's story, sparking fresh public outrage. Viewers are left asking the same question her parents have for over a decade. How can a woman stab herself 20 times, including in the back of the head, and have it ruled a suicide? The unanswered questions. Why did investigators quickly abandon the homicide ruling? Was the crime scene thoroughly processed, or was it mishandled? Did pressure from prosecutors influence the medical examiner's decision? And most importantly, if Ellen didn't kill herself, then who did? 14 years later, the case of Ellen Greenberg remains one of the most controversial unsolved mysteries in America. Her parents continue to fight for the truth, refusing to let their daughter's story fade away. As the spotlight returns through documentaries and public demand, many hope the case will finally be reopened, and that justice for Ellen will one day be served. Because one thing is certain, suicide doesn't look like 20 stab wounds.